The healthiest looking tomato plant in your garden is lying to you. And by the end of summer, that lie is going to cost you half your harvest. It is the middle of June. You walk out behind the house, and the vines are taller than you are thick, dark green, so heavy with leaf you cannot see daylight through them. They look like the finest tomato plants you have ever grown. So you reach in, proud, to pick the first ripe one of the season, and your hand closes on nothing. A few small tomatoes, hard and green as marbles, buried deep in the shade where the sun never reaches, on a plant that should be feeding your whole family clear into October. And down at the bottom, the trouble has already begun. The lowest leaves are spotting, small brown rings haloed in sickly yellow. The first breath of Septoria leaf spot, or early blight, the kind that climbs up out of the soil and steals the leaves the plant needs, killing the fruit before it can ever ripen. You walk back to the porch and you ask yourself what you did wrong. The plants looked so strong in June, you did everything right. Good soil, good seed, steady water, sturdy cages. So why are they all leaves and no fruit? And why is the disease creeping in when you have been so careful? The answer is one you will hardly believe, because it sounds completely backward. You needed to take more off that plant, not give it more. Now sit with that a moment. A tomato plant left to grow the way nature intended will never hand you a heavy harvest. It hands you a beautiful green bush, 100 little side shoots, a tangled, humid jungle in the middle, and a sad handful of fruit hidden where no sun can reach it. The plant is not trying to feed your family. It is trying to spread and survive and seed itself, and it does that by growing in every direction at once. But the gardener who knows the old way does the one thing the plant would never do for itself. He takes things away. Done right, those few careful cuts turn a 30-pound plant into a 50 or 60-pound plant. Same seed, same soil, same water. Half again as much fruit, ripened weeks earlier with a fraction of the disease. No new fertilizer, no fancy variety, just a sharp blade and a steady habit. This is one of the oldest pieces of kitchen garden knowledge in these Tennessee hills. My mother knew it, Susan's mother knew it. Every farm wife in Lawrence County with a serious tomato patch has known it for 100 years. And most folks gardening today have either never heard it or they have heard the wrong version and made things worse. Now, I will be honest with you about the bold words in the title. Disease-free. No plant in a wet July is ever truly disease-free, and any man who tells you different is selling something. What careful pruning gives you is a plant that resists disease, one that dries fast after rain, breathes through an open canopy, and shrugs off the blight that would have rotted a crowded one. And bigger harvests does not mean some record-breaking single vine. It means more good fruit, ripened earlier, from every plant in your patch, year after year. That is the honest math. And it is far better math than the lottery the seed catalogs are selling you. Before I show you how it is done, let me ask one small thing, and I will only ask the once. If you have ever lost a harvest to a tall, leafy, fruitless plant like the one I just described, do an old gardener a kindness. Tap that subscribe button and leave a like on this video. That is the only way knowledge like this gets carried to the next gardener instead of being lost for good. That is all I will ask of you. Now, let me show you how it is done. Today, I will walk you through the whole of it. The two kinds of tomato plants, and how to tell which kind is standing in your garden. The anatomy of the plant, so the cutting becomes plain as day. How to prune each kind properly, what to take, and what to never touch. The small tools and the right habits that keep disease out. And then, at the very end, the one final cut you make in the last weeks of the season, the single cut that turns hard green tomatoes into ripe red ones before the frost can take them. Stay for that one. It is the cut almost nobody knows, and it is worth the whole video. This is not theory. This is the same way I have pruned tomatoes for 40 years, and the same way my father pruned them before me. Start with the two kinds, because the pruning is completely different for each, and if you prune the wrong kind the wrong way, you will shrink your harvest instead of growing it. When you buy your plants in spring, the label gives you one of two words: determinate or indeterminate. The university folks who study this for a living will tell you the same. The whole difference comes down to one thing: how the plant decides to stop. A determinate, or bush, tomato knows when to quit. It grows to about 4 or 5 feet, sets all its flower clusters in one short window, ripens nearly all its fruit within 2 or 3 weeks, and then it is finished. This is the kind for canning Susan puts up 24 jars of sauce in a single weekend from ours. Roma, San Marzano, Celebrity, most of the paste tomatoes. An indeterminate, or vining, tomato never knows when to quit. It keeps climbing and setting new fruit all season long, taller and bushier, until the first hard frost finally kills it 8-10 feet in a long, warm year. 100 tomatoes spread from July clear through October. This is your slicing tomato, for the table and the sandwiches and the giving away to neighbors. Brandywine, Cherokee purple, most heirlooms, and nearly every cherry. And if the label is long gone, look at the top of the main stem in midsummer. If the very tip has closed into a flower bud with no leaf growing above it, the plant has reached its end. That is a determinate. If the tip is still pushing out fresh leaves with no sign of stopping, it is still climbing. That is an indeterminate. Both kinds get pruned. They just get pruned very differently, and mixing them up will cost you the harvest. Now, the anatomy. Because once you know the parts, the cutting tells itself. The main stem is the trunk that runs up the center tender on a young plant, thick as your thumb on an old one. The leaves branch off it at intervals, and each leaf is a little factory, taking in sun and turning it into the sugar that fills your fruit. Leaves are good. You want most of them. The flower clusters branch off too, starting about a foot up, and every one of them becomes tomatoes. You want all of them. Never, ever cut a flower cluster. And then there is the part that causes nearly all the trouble: the sucker. A sucker is a new shoot that grows out of the V-joint where a leaf meets the main stem, the armpit of the plant, you might call it. It is not a leaf. It is not a flower cluster. It is a whole second tomato plant, trying to start itself up at the side of the first. Leave one be, and it grows into a full stem of its own leaves, its own clusters, its own suckers, all of them fighting the main stem for the same water, food, and sun. You will find it by looking right at that V-joint, a small shoot rising at about a 45-degree angle with tiny leaves of its own. That is your culprit. On a young plant, they pinch off soft between 2 fingers. On an old plant, they have gone woody and want a clean blade. The whole art of pruning is knowing which suckers to take and which to leave, and that depends entirely on which kind of plant you are standing in front of. Start with the determinate, because this is the easy one. Hardly any work at all. A determinate has a fixed amount of growing in it. It will reach its size, set its flowers, and stop. So if you go cutting suckers off all over it, you are cutting away the very branches it needs to make your fruit. Leave most of it alone. Here is the whole rule. Find the first flower cluster, usually a foot to a foot and a half up, and remove only the suckers growing below it. Why the bottom ones? Because they live closest to the soil, and the soil is where the disease waits. Septoria and early blight overwinter in the ground, and every rain splashes them up onto the lowest leaves and shoots. Strip away those bottom 6 or 7 suckers, and you lift the whole canopy up off the dirt. Air moves through. The low leaves dry fast. The blight has a much harder time taking hold. And that is all you do to a determinate, a little pruning at the bottom, and let the rest grow as it likes. Cut it back hard, and you only rob yourself of fruit. There is one exception worth knowing, and the university trials back it up. The single sucker sitting just below that first flower cluster is usually the strongest one on the plant, and that one is worth keeping because it will grow into a heavy second fruit-bearing branch. So take all the lower suckers, but leave the strong one right beneath the cluster. The land grant research on staked and pruned tomatoes lands exactly where the old-timers always did. A pruned plant gives you fewer tomatoes, but larger ones, and it ripens them earlier. For most of us, earlier and larger is precisely the trade we want. Now the indeterminate. This is the bigger job. because this plant will grow forever if you let it a tangled 8-foot jungle by August, dark and damp in the middle, perfect for disease. With its strength spread so thin across 200 growing tips that every tomato comes out small. The trick is to decide, up front, how many main stems you will allow and then hold to it. You have 3 honest choices. Single leader, 1 stem, every sucker removed, all the plant's strength poured into that one line. The biggest individual fruit, the easiest to stake, and a slightly smaller total harvest. This is what the greenhouse growers do, because it makes the most of tight vertical space. Double leader. You let 1 strong sucker, usually that same one just below the first flower cluster, grow into a second main stem. A larger total harvest than single, fruit still a fine size, still easy enough to hold up. This is what most careful home gardeners settle on, and it is what I do most years. Triple leader, 3 stems. The largest total harvest, but smaller fruit, harder to support, and a great deal more crowding. Save that one for folks with strong cages and plenty of room. Pick your number. Then once a week, walk the row and take every new sucker that has shown up in the V-joints, every single one, except the leaders you chose to keep. A few words now on doing it well, because the how matters every bit as much as the what. Pinch the young suckers off with your fingers while they are small, a couple inches or less. A young sucker is full of water, so you snap it sideways between thumb and forefinger, and it leaves a wound so small it heals over by morning before any disease can find it. Wait too long, though, and that sucker turns woody, sometimes near as thick as your little finger, even setting flowers of its own, and now pinching tears the bark and leaves a ragged wound the plant needs days to close. For those, use a small sharp shear and cut clean. And here is the #1 mistake I see, the one that quietly undoes everything else: dirty tools. Tomatoes carry disease from plant to plant on the blade of your shears. Wipe that blade with a rag dipped in rubbing alcohol between every single plant, and 1 sick vine can never infect the whole row. A clean tool is worth more than a sharp one. Prune only in the morning of a dry, sunny day, never in the damp, never in the evening. The wounds dry over within the hour in the sun and the wind, and disease can barely get a foothold. Pruning in wet weather is how a man spreads blight through his entire patch in a single afternoon. And as the plant climbs, keep stripping those lower leaves. Once it stands 2 or 3 feet tall, take off everything touching the ground or hanging close to it, right up to that first flower truss. Those are the leaves the soil splashes onto first. Clearing them opens the bottom of the plant to the air, and the air is what keeps it well. Now, before I show you that final cut at the end of the season, let me pause for just a moment and ask you something easy. Drop me a single word in the comments below. The state you are gardening in, or your growing zone, that is all. I read every one, and it tells me who I am talking to, and roughly when your first frost will come, which matters a great deal for the very next thing I am about to show you. 1 word, then we go on. Now, the final cut, topping. And it is the exact opposite of everything I have told you all summer. In the last weeks of the season, when the nights turn cool and the first frost is only a few weeks off, your indeterminate plant is still trying to grow. New flowers, new little green tomatoes, fresh shoots reaching for the top. And not one of those latecomers has time to ripen before the frost kills it dead. Every bit of strength the plant spends climbing now is strength stolen straight from the green fruit, already on the vine fruit that could ripen, if only the plant would stop. So you stop it for the plant. About 3 to 4 weeks before your expected first frost, take your clean shears and cut the very top off every indeterminate vine, the growing tip, and any new clusters that have appeared in the last week or 2. Cut hard. Take a whole foot off if you have to. You are not being cruel. You are telling the plant the season is over. Ripen what you have. Within days, the plant answers. All the energy it was pouring into growing upward now floods into the fruit already set. The green tomatoes you had given up on begin to turn pink, then red. A topped vine in late September can ripen 20 or 30 extra tomatoes that would otherwise have been lost to the frost. That is the final cut. Hard, late, and worth more than you would ever believe. And one small gift before you go, a trick most folks never learn in their whole lives. That sucker you pinch off in early summer, do not throw it on the compost pile. Set it in a glass of water or push it down into damp soil. Keep it warm and shaded a few days and it will root. A tomato stem can grow roots anywhere along its length. The botanists call it totipotency. I call it one of God's small kindnesses to the gardener. In 2 weeks, you have a brand new plant. Same variety, same vigor, free for the taking. In a warm, long season, set it right back out for a second crop. In a cool country like ours, raise it on to give a young plant to a neighbor or to a grandchild starting his very first garden. Free plants all summer long, from the very things you were about to throw away. Now I want you to stop with me a moment, because here is where it all comes together. Look at what we have walked through. 2 kinds of plant, each pruned its own way. A few small cuts that turn a 30-pound plant into 50 or 60. Lower leaves stripped clean to keep the blight off the canopy. A wiped blade so one sick vine cannot take the whole row. Morning timing so every wound dries safe. The final cut that ripens 20 or 30 extra tomatoes, a plant, and free new plants from the suckers you would have tossed. This is not theory. This is how my mother pruned, and her mother before her, and Susan's mother in her own kitchen garden. And the extension offices, Oregon State, the University of New Hampshire, and others have put these very methods through modern trials and found every part of them sound. Pruning to a liter or 2 gives larger fruit and earlier ripening. Stripping the lower leaves breaks the disease cycle. Topping drives the late energy into the fruit. The old folks knew it by feel. The university folks now know it by science. The two line up exactly. So why have so few people ever heard it? Because there is no money in the seed business in teaching you to prune. A careful pruner gets a long, heavy harvest from just a few plants, which means he buys fewer plants next spring. But there is good money in selling 50 seedlings to a family that would only ever need 10 if they pruned well. So the knowledge stays hidden in the old gardens, passed quietly from mother to daughter, while a whole country grows beautiful green bushes that yield half of what they could. You can be the one who remembers the old way. So here is what I want you to do this week. Walk out to your patch and check each plant, determinate or indeterminate, by the label or by the top of the stem if the label is gone. On the determinates, find the first flower cluster. Take the suckers below it, but leave the strong one just beneath and let the rest be. On the indeterminates, choose your leaders 1, 2, or 3 and take every other sucker as it comes, pinching the small ones, shearing the woody ones clean, always in a dry morning. Strip every leaf touching the ground. And 3 or 4 weeks before your frost, top the vines hard and let them ripen. Then tell me down in the comments, what variety has your family always grown, the one your mother or your grandmother loved best? Those named heirlooms are exactly the kind of inherited knowledge that vanishes when nobody writes it down. Share the variety, share the region, share the story. I read every single one. And if these are the kind of old ways you want more of, the way our grandparents grew real food without the catalogs and the chemicals, then do one last thing before you go. Subscribe and stay close. There is a great deal of the old knowledge left to pass on, and I would be proud to have you here for every bit of it. Tap that subscribe button now so the next one finds its way straight to you. Until then, walk the rows, find the suckers, pinch with respect, and trust that the plant always grows better fruit when a careful hand has been laid to it. That is how the old folks did it. And that is how it is still done in any kitchen garden that remembers.